Dr. McKenna, what are you thinking about this morning?
Sabbath? Okay. I certain things rock my world. And the thing that I was struck by this morning, and we've done Wild Conversation podcasts on this topic, but it's such an important piece, is I want to ask our listeners this question. In order to change, do you believe you have to do something different or think something different? And so I so
Mm.
I think it's a really important question, right? Because the reality is this, and I had a chance. I really didn't understand the power of this kind of a person's voice in my life at the time, but I studied under a guy named Alan Wicker, who actually studied this very question. And it was this question about, are we more affected by our attitudes or our behaviors? So, in other words, if I want to do something different, do I do something different or do I change my attitude? Which you could, in today's kind of thinking, the word could be mindset. Do I think differently or do I do
Mhm.
something differently? And what's fascinating about this research that was done is like, it's actually both. It was very unclear about which pathway was most powerful, and it quite frankly might depend on the person. But I do want to highlight, and I think there's a lot of talk in our world around mindset and about the power of the stories we tell ourselves. And some people want to like, but there's also this thing called cognitive dissonance. So it's the most one of the most fundamental psychological principles. If anyone takes most of us took general psych and got a C in it, like that was the class we really struggled in. But when we did, we talked about dissonance, and all dissonance is cognitive dissonance is if there's a difference between what I'm thinking and what I'm doing, I will seek to decrease that dissonance. I'll seek to decrease that rub or that tension because it doesn't feel good. So I'll either change what I'm doing or I'll change what I'm thinking. And there's so much more that we could say about that because I mean we know this is true, right? That people tell themselves story. They say like, I really should follow up on that job interview that I started off with, but I'm really underqualified. And so that feeling, that thinking of being underqualified then causes you to not make the call, to
Mm.
follow up because I don't feel like I deserve to be there. So we know that there's power in that. And I think it has direct relevance to our conversations today, given our guest for today. So, Sab, will you
Let's
launch us
get this
in?
wild conversation going. Welcome to the Wild Conversation, where human being and human doing converge, reshaping the world of leadership, culture, and performance. Today, we get to have a conversation with Wiley Cortez. He proudly serves as the founder and CEO of Make Moves, Not Statements, a platform designed to connect and embolden professionals to pursue their passions while making a tangible difference in the world. And he's the co-owner of Tricor Technologies, an excavation services company renowned for its innovative solutions and commitment to excellence. His life is a testament to the power of transformation. And most importantly, he's a longtime friend of Wild Leaders, user of the Wild Trust platform, and trusted friend of Dr. McKenna. Wiley, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
We're stoked for this conversation, and we are going to play a quick round of wild cards. I did not prep you for this, but you're
No, you didn't.
familiar with wild cards. I pulled out 10. I didn't look at the questions on the back. If this is your first time listening or tuning in, we have a deck of wild cards, about 50 of them, each with a different developmentally focused question. So we're going to play a quick round. I'll go first. We'll pick a number
Yeah.
1 and 10, and then you can go, Wiley, and Rob will round us out. I'm gonna do 6. I don't think I've ever picked 6 on the podcast. I don't know, I could be wrong. Is your introversion or extroversion dependent on the situation? Yes, I would say yes.
That was a
I
yes or
gotta,
no
I
question?
need to feel I know how interesting, right? I gotta feel the room a little bit. I'm generally extroverted. I love a good conversation, especially with a stranger, but I do have to feel it out first. If depending also how many people are in the room. If it's just like
Yeah.
me and another one, no problem. If it's a group, then I gotta think about it. Okay, Wiley, number between 1 and 10.
Let's go with the new six.
Okay.
The new
Yeah,
six.
A
six.
new 6. Okay, I'm pulling that out. Okay. What do others need from you that will require you to stretch yourself?
I think it's to continue to, I would say that it's to continue to expand in my leadership development so I could show up how I need to for the people that are around me in my life, in my businesses, and in my community.
That is good.
Thank you. Rob,
I'm gonna go with number 7.
what important thing is happening at the intersection of your life and work?
Oh, this conversation, being on this in this with Wiley, it's like we've developed a deep and trusted friendship. But we also work together. We've done
Yeah.
work together, and so I think it's I feel like this moment is one of those things that's for me incredibly life-giving because they're like you know me, I love to get something done, and so Wiley and I are both like that, where we're like, let's go for a
Yeah.
walk, or let's figure out how we could change the world. Yeah, I
Wow,
think this moment is there. Thank you, Sab.
love
That
that.
is awesome. It is so good to have you on here, Wiley. And I think one of the things I would love to have to just open up with is what's good.
Yeah.
What's good right now?
What's good right now? There's a lot happening in my life. And one of the things that's just recently happened in my family is we've all become business owners, which has been both exciting and challenging. As you know, Rob, I have my daughter Cicely. She just started her makeup and hairstyling business, and
Wow.
it's doing really, really well. Rachel started her CrossFit coaching business, both classes and in-person one-on-one training, and that is going so well. So it's something that is happening right now, and seeing the growth, but then also the challenges as business owners that we go through that we're all experiencing at different times of our business is something that's a little unusual
It
for all of
is.
us. So there's strategy sessions, there's coffee dates. Like when I take sis out to coffee, sometimes it's all about business. Okay, like this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm going through, how do you navigate through this, right? You're coaching and leading at a different level, other than being just not just my daughter, but being my daughter, where
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, hey, I just want to go grab lunch with my kid, like
Yeah.
not talk about business. But
Yeah.
so that's awesome and exciting in my world right now, alongside of my coaching business is finally taking off. It's sputtered a little bit, but it's taking off. We're doing individual one-on-one coaching, as well as cohorts, up to 15 people in cohorts, which is really, really cool. That's something that I love to do. So those are a few things that are happening in my world right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome. I love it. It changes the nature of like work talk at the dinner table, doesn't it?
yeah.
When you, yeah.
Yeah.
And that
Like, can
that
we
is
just talk about life?
I know, right? Right. Would you give just a little bit of a story of your development as a leader? Like I just so that people understand Wiley Cortez and some of those formative things. And one of the specific questions I would have is like maybe a couple of experiences early on in life
Mhm.
that were really impactful that shaped the leader and person that you are today.
Just a little bit of context of who I am and where I'm from, and the challenges that I've chosen to be a part of, if you will. Southern California kid, born and raised just outside of Los Angeles in a city called Riverside. Was involved in a lot of different things, as you can imagine, in the 90s growing up in Southern California. One of the things that I seen as I was involved in gang life and other things to that nature, I always saw that there was somebody leading, but
Hmm.
never realized that took, uh, I would say, somebody special to do that. Because when you lead and people believe in you, believe in your vision, and trust you, like they will basically do whatever it is that you need to be done. Whatever, you can just take your mind wherever you want to go, right? Southern California, along the streets and everything. And I saw that, but it never clicked in my mind that that would be something that I would use down the road as an example of how to lead. Obviously,
Hmm.
leaving all the bad behind, but then just how to build and grow people to be the best of themselves, be the best version of themselves, and maximize their ability to perform at whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
That was something crazy. I also played basketball prior to that. So let me rewind a little bit, playing basketball and how the point guard leads basically. He
Hmm.
sets up the stage for what is about to happen, the play that's about to be ran on the court, right? We have the leader, that's the coach and the general manager, well, everything, but on the court, it's already done. And every person on that, what I realize is that every person on that court has a role to play, and they have to play it as good as possible for the team to be as good as possible. So those are two examples to me early on that I didn't realize were going to be impactful in my life. Like, I never thought like, oh man, the point guard's leading and I used to play 2 and 3. It's off guards. But I didn't ever realize that, oh man, this person, the point guard, is setting the stage for us to run a play. He's leading us basically. As soon as the ball leaves his hand, that play is going to unravel, good or bad, right? We're going to score or not. And I had to play my position as a 2 guard as well as I could in order for the team to be as successful as we could be, right? You saw the potential. I saw the potential in the 3 and 4 and 5. So those were 2 examples to me.
I want to step back for a second. I think one thing that's important for people to understand is like make moves, not statements, and also Prycore Technology. Will you describe those 2 organizations?
Prycore Technology is a sewer rehabilitation company. We work in the trades. So it's based out of Seattle, Washington. We have about 30 different people right now doing excavation, and the rest are salespeople, estimators, and admin. Make moves, not statements is an all-encompassing brand, mainly in garment production and distribution. However, we've also now taken it into the coaching space, and that is the place and platform that we build and grow people. We lead them, starting with vision, limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs, how to be and stay motivated, overcoming self-doubt. We go through all these modules to talk with them about what that looks like in their life. So completely different spaces. Completely different spaces.
I love both of those things. I hope people who hear that say like, oh my goodness, like I always thought I was a weirdo because I have these 2 things that people think are so different, and they are different spaces, but there are some commonalities in mission, between those things. And I think when you talk about excavation, since you and I have known each other, I've used that metaphor all over the place, right?
Yeah.
It's related to the power of whole leader development, and the excavation process, the digging process necessary to get there is so important. Will you say something about, so with make moves, not statements, I think it's fascinating when someone's connecting. So how in the world did this guy I'm looking at or listening to connect clothing and streetwear to that bigger mission?
So it was a full circle moment for me. I believe it was Wild that had us do an exercise of people that have impacted you in your life. I did the exercise once, and then I went through the exercise again, and that name just kept coming up. I've asked Bruce if I could use his name. So his name's Bruce Barber. When I met him, he had just whispered something in my ear. He's like, people see the way you're leading your family. Good job. Keep it up. That small voice in my ear that he said as we were shaking hands and hugging turned into him and I exchanging phone numbers, and then ultimately into a long mentorship, a year solid, but then probably about 3 or 4 years. But in that first year, I remember we were coming up on about a year, and he had shared with me, he's like, hey, Wiley, we've been meeting for about a year. You've talked to me about all these dreams and things you want to do, but we haven't seen no moves. You have to start making moves and stop talking about it. So the name just came out of that to me. It's like, you have to make the moves and not the statements in order to progress and do what it is that you're called or purposed to do. I love fashion. I've always loved fashion ever since I was a kid. Always with the latest trends, with what's going on, what's coming. So I basically collapsed the 2 or married the 2 together. Said, man, this is a really cool name that I can definitely get behind. And I believe people will get behind it, whether it's out of curiosity, like, hey, what does that mean? They like the clothes, the color. And ultimately now it's led to being a platform for people to actually live that life, make the moves required to live a life that you want. We all have a life that we want to live. And it's just on the other side of making those moves.
Thank you for that. In fact, there's pieces of that story that are news to me. So it really does It lands and it makes
Yeah.
complete sense when you explain it that way. What a powerful thing. One of the things that is unique about the two of us is we've had a chance to work together and
Yeah.
to make an investment in your team members and your organization. And I feel like it's such an honor and a privilege to be friends with a CEO or a senior leader of an organization or an owner
Yeah.
who is trying to change things. And you know about our emphasis on measuring and building trust
Hmm.
and on investing in whole and intentional leaders. And one of the things I wonder if you would describe in your own words, what is whole and intentional leader development about? Because I know the things that you talk about. I'd love to hear from your
Yeah.
perspective. What is that about?
To me, it's about alignment. It's alignment with who you are, your vision, your values. To me, that's what being a leader is. Understanding that may not be easy a lot of the times. What do I align with? And that takes, you mentioned excavation, that takes that deeper dive into, okay, what is my life about? When you have a vision for your life, you understand how important it is to live that out. I always say that your vision has been given to you, and there's other people on the other side of that. So for me to fulfill my vision, there's other people, like the people in my business,
Hmm.
my family. Like, I was given a vision, and there's an impact that they're going to have because of that, or I'm going to have in them because of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
almost like I have to fulfill my call, the call on my life, for them to experience. And not that if I don't, they're going to suffer or not, but that's how I believe in my mind.
That's so good. So one of the things that back to my original comments about that, thinking and doing. And I
Hmm.
love that with that concept of make moves, like sometimes you just need to do something different. And that will actually you will have to change your thinking because
Yeah.
you're going to reduce that dissonance, you're going to do something different. And it's so fascinating. Like another example of this that we know works, that I want to come full circle to some of the leaders that you've invested in, and
Hmm.
that we've been able to partner in investing in some of the folks like leaders on Wiley's team. Like I know some of them personally. And one of the things that is fascinating, this is sort of a case in point where we can see that actually thinking does change things. And think about it like if we all know the idea of counting sheep if you can't go to sleep.
Hmm.
Like, why do we count sheep? We're forcing our minds to think about something else. Because most of the time when we can't sleep, our mind is so busy we can't sleep because we're focused on all these things we're anxious about. And
Hmm.
so the practice of counting sheep is basically deciding to put my mind on something else. And
Hmm.
it's a fascinating thing when it comes to developing leader capacity. I've seen this in I've seen the lights turn on for certain leaders on your teams. You don't get people to change their minds by telling them to change their minds.
Right.
Give them something to think about. I take any member of your team. Let's say we're talking about competence and we're doing the skills and
Right.
knowledge inventory, and suddenly members of your team are like, I never really have taken a moment to think about what I'm really good at. And suddenly it's like counting
Or
sheep.
that I'm a leader. I remember that came
Or
up.
even that
I
I'm
didn't.
a leader.
I
Or
didn't. I
even the
was.
possibility I'm a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I remember that came up.
what have you seen in terms of changes in people as you've invested in them?
Building trust in your business starts with being able to measure it so that you can create a pathway for change. Our Wild Trust Index measures the drivers of trust at the personal, team, and organizational levels. We are building the largest database on the drivers of trust inside of organizations. This survey will inform growth imperatives and the necessary organizational change needed to fuel that growth. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.
Well, if I could just go back to 2019, 2020, when I found Dr. Rob McKenna and Daniel Hollick,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I was simply just doing development on my own behalf. But what I started noticing, like when I started noticing the impact that it was having in my life and how I wanted more, and how it was actually as I applied it, it was changing. So I did something as simple as have, I think it was Daniel. I don't remember who I had come on initially. And I said, man, this works for me. Let me start trying some of this. with the team.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had meetings. The sales team has always operated on their own. It was just I was an absent leader, basically, or an absent CEO of the company. And we were doing great. That's what I had asked you earlier. Like, I'd be curious to know what the performance level is in the jungle trust. Like, what would that be? Because I feel like we were in that jungle in 2019, 2020, where everybody was about themselves, but our company was operating at a very high level, revenue-wise and profit-wise. Moving forward, ultimately bring Wild into the space. It had changed me completely. It had changed me where I was thinking different, moving different, acting different, because I knew that I had a purpose and a calling over my life, and I had a stake in the ground for what I believed others could achieve and accomplish if they only knew that their life was designed to be bigger and better than where they were at right now. So bring Wild in, and you're right. The leaders in our organization were kind of like, man, what is this? What's going on? Like, what are we doing? Until the brain started thinking about some of the questions that were being asked. And it was almost like those questions were challenging their thought process. You mean there's something bigger? What is purpose? What is calling? Skills and knowledge inventory. There was a lot of different things that got people thinking at different stages of the time that we spent together. And fast forwarding, I believe we worked 3 years, maybe went into the 4th year, but it was 3 or 4 years. Going into that 4th year, not even thinking about this, Rob, the development that had taken place within our org, and we had experience. One was like, man, I've just learned so much. I want to go venture out on my own. It's like, man, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we want to see. We want to invest in people for them to see who they are, what they're about, and what they could go do. One left. Like, man, that's incredible. We support you. We stand with you. How can we see you through this? Awesome. Later on, actually in 2024, the development had been so high because 2 things: the relationship that I had built with the team and they had built with me created a trust where we were working together. And the company had scaled to the highest level that it had in 14 years. The highest level. And relationship and trust to me go hand in hand, but I'll come back to that. The team, again, developed to a level that they had never been at, to the point where, and this is a positive effect of all of this. They, one ventured out and went to be a general manager at another trades company, which is doing phenomenal. 2 of the other guys left and started their own business. They're doing incredible. So they got developed to a point where it was like, hey, respectfully, I don't need to be under your leadership anymore. I've learned a lot and I want to go venture out in mine. And I say positively affect because it did affect our business, but it was so good to see those individuals grow to a level where they stepped out. Because if you would have asked me in 2020 or 2020, 2021, or even asked them, I would imagine that they would be, oh, I'm going to be here until I don't know when. So what I believed happened in those 4 or 5 years is the relationship grew so strong that trust was created. And when we brought Wild in, they were listening. They were receptive. They would engage. They would apply. And it was happening in front of my eyes, Rob, and in front of yours too. I mean, I think you did the first year and Daniel did the second year. I don't remember how that all shook out. But as it's happening right in front of your eyes, it almost further had me place my stake into the ground to say, hey, man, I'm taking a stand, not only for the employees here at Prycor, but for everybody that's in my circle of influence. Because now I've seen that what we're doing will allow somebody to see and dream bigger than where they're currently at. And you could be in a really good place. You could be in a really good place.
We work with a lot of organizations with CEOs who are either in a moment of tremendous growth or in some cases not the other way, right? So things are not growing, and the economic conditions that surround them, higher interest rates are affecting carrying costs, inventory costs. There's all kinds of things that are happening across our sphere. What advice would you have for a leader who's struggling with this reality? Is like, if I invest in my people, they might go somewhere else.
And if you don't, they're going to stay. If you don't invest in them, they're going to stay, and you have an uninvested.
I guess, how would you encourage them to think about that when it's like that's hard to do. It's like, I'm going to invest in you, and I'm going to spend years investing in you development. You're going to go add value somewhere else.
The first thing I'm thinking about is when Wild stepped on the stage. I'm sure you could say this. I saw it. Wild was met with resistance. Like, what is this? What we did was we pushed through that resistance. Now it's a little bit different for a company, because they're employees of you. It's a team. It's mandatory or what have you. I would say to that business owner or CEO, push past that resistance. The ones that need to stay will stay. The ones that never saw the vision or the dream that you have as a CEO, they're going to leave. And I would ask, do you want that person on your team that doesn't see the vision, that isn't standing with you to achieve? I'm thinking about Prycor. If my team right now wasn't standing and believing in the vision for Prycor, let's just say in the next 5 years, my question would be, what exactly are you doing here? What's your vision and dream? Having those conversations about the reasons that you're here and how we could collaborate to help.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something, maybe one of the employees wants to climb to a different level or a different part of the business. Well, this development's going to help you get there. Let's collab and get you there, as opposed to just leave. Or you don't see what's going on here and you can't help. Maybe this isn't the place for you. Having and being able to, that's one of the things I've learned as a CEO, having those conversations up front and sooner than later will save you the headache of working on bringing that person along. Now, there is people that you do work on and bring them along to believe not only one, that they're bigger and greater than where they're at, and their vision is so small or don't have one at all, to where you can help them achieve that. So push past the resistance would be my first response to that. To that, because you're going to get it, especially if you've never done it, which was something that we weren't doing. I think it was Tuesdays from 8 to 8:30 that we were having our meetings. We didn't have that prior to. So not only did we start something new, so there's a transition that they weren't liking, but then two, there's people that they've never met either. What is this?
So let's go big for a second. And let's get into trust. So from Wiley Cortez, from your perspective, what does trust have to do with the performance and the well-being of the people in the organizations you lead right now? What does trust have to do with the performance and the well-being?
I would back up to that question and say, one of the thing that I learned over the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years maybe, is that it starts with relationships, which I think I shared with you. I know I shared with Daniel that it was hard for me to have the type of relationships that I have now in the beginning with my team. Because in a relationship like you and I, you know, things deeper than maybe this conversation, like personal, marital, maybe financial. I mean, some other things from other people. And that starts happening in those places with relationship. And as you start having those conversations about those things, now you're building trust. And with that trust, now the person knows that you have my back, I have yours. Let's make this thing work. That's a very simplistic way of putting it, but that is literally what I saw in my business. And the result of that is Wiley cares for me, so I trust what he says. Not that I'm perfect, not that everything's going to be perfect, but the way he's leading us is the way this thing's going to grow. The way I'm going to have the best job, the way I'm going to feed my family, all of those different things is what I saw. And I'll tell you, in that relationship building, man, again, I think it was you that I called. I was like, man, I don't know about this relationship thing, man. I'm hearing things that I don't want to hear. And now I'm looking at the person in a certain way. So some judgment started coming into place. It wasn't until trust happened and the result organically of what was happening in the company, that now I have a heart for the person. They're not just an employee. They're a team member,
Yeah.
and I have a heart for your well-being.
Yeah.
I remember I went to one of my employees. He had a baby and she was turning 1. I went to their birthday party. That was the biggest thing for them.
Hmm.
The boss of the company showed up
Yeah.
to my 1-year-old daughter's birthday. Rob, if you would have asked me if I would have done that 8 years ago, absolutely not. Why? Why would I go and do that?
Yeah.
But in my
Yeah.
own development as well, I know I built the relationship with him so well that I wanted to go. And it
Yeah.
wasn't close. My guy lives in Puyallup. I was like, man,
Yeah.
I live in Kirkland, bro. Like, I got to drive all the way to Puyallup. Like,
Yeah.
so those are some things with relationship and trust that I would share, or that I can share, that I saw again or experienced in my own business. And I'm not saying that those things were simple, and they're not always simple. They're not always easy.
Yeah.
Relationships are complex. We're all human. But what happens when you do build those relationships?
Yeah.
The hard conversations aren't easier, but because you have a stake in the ground, if you will, for that person, they
It's so,
trust.
yeah, it's so interesting because in our research on trust, if you look at organizations that are in the stronghold, so they have high
Mhm.
organizational trust and high team trust, we had this question from a few CEOs as we were giving feedback on what their employees had said about trust. And
Mhm.
there was this idea that if I'm in the stronghold, then it's all good. Like I land there and it's all good, as opposed to the idea that trust has to be maintained. And what we found that was fascinating is 40% of the employees within organizations that are in the stronghold are in the jungle. So,
Mm.
so what that means is that even organizations that are doing really well in terms of trust, there are still pockets of challenge. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's always
Right.
it's going to be question and so on. And one of the things I think that you have that so many leaders, business leaders experience is the necessity when it comes to the performance side, the necessity of trust between different functional parts of an organization. And how that like the trust there one thing that almost every organization deals with is the trust between either operations and
Mhm.
sales and actual delivery.
Oh, yeah.
Talk just for a second about the necessity for trust between those different parts of a business.
That's a work in progress.
No,
But
I
yes.
love it that you start there. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs to
That
hear that
is
it's a work in progress.
it's a work in progress, and I think I believe, in my experience, it's a never ending process of working on that,
Mm,
because you do have, everybody knows a sales team, right? They want to get the job closed, and then the team gets it, and maybe the field team gets it, and it's not, maybe you oversold or overpromised, and we underdeliver. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. What I have also experienced, though, is working with the key leaders in those departments and having them collaborate,
yeah.
understand each other. That's worked in our business. But again, it's a work in progress. It's intentionally having those conversations and setting up those appointments for those guys to meet. In our business, for example, if I didn't set it up, or Jason didn't set up, my business partner at Prycor, those conversations wouldn't happen. So
Yeah.
when I say it's a work in progress, literally, it's a work in progress. But the outcome of those conversations, when those appointments and meetings do happen, they're so valuable, and there's a
Mm,
lot of takeaways. There's clarification, there's understanding, they're seeing, like, oh,
yeah.
Rob, I seen you in that meeting. I understand what you were saying about the excavation and how it didn't go well, based on what all of those things. In my experience with our companies, is people want to be seen and heard for what they do. If I'm
Mm,
the excavation manager, I want to be seen and heard and recognized that, hey, I'm running this operation and we're doing really well. Well, sales guy wants to be seen and heard for the sales that they're bringing in. I know it's deeper than that,
yeah.
but in a team setting, yeah. You think about a basketball team, right? The Chicago
Yeah.
Bulls back in the 90s. I don't think Jordan was about being seen. I think he was about a bigger mission and a vision. He wanted that championship. And
Yeah.
he knew the people around him could help him do that. So he utilized them and leveraged their skills and talents
Yeah.
and further develop those skills and talents
Yeah.
to achieve what only he's been able to achieve.
Trust is has multiple layers. We call them circles of trust, where
Yeah.
it starts with awareness within. Like, I can't become trustworthy if there aren't certain things becoming increasingly true within me. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not understanding certain things about myself. But you just said something that's so critical, is that trust is then the dynamic of it becomes really interesting when it becomes a relational thing. So now
Yeah.
it's like that awareness within me is bumping into that awareness in you. And just quite simply, to bottom shelf that, if we know each other better, trust in that team level becomes really important. If you were to encourage other founders who are challenged to build a healthy and whole organization where trust is the norm and not the exception, where leader capacity is being developed and learned, but they're struggling with that, or they're
Mm-hmm.
like at that point where they haven't thought about that yet because they haven't thought about their thinking yet. They've just never been invited. What would you say to them to encourage them?
In my experience, I found that developing myself along with my team has been the most instrumental thing for us. Not only does the leader get development, but the leader with the team. Another example of Wild in our organization, I was going through along with the team. We were all being transparent. We were all being vulnerable. We were all learning. That's where I saw the development the
Hmm.
most. I would also say that getting clear on the values, prioritizing relationships over transactions. It's very easy to get distracted by the transaction. We're a sales driven company at Prycore Technologies. And for Make Moves Not Statements, we want people and we want garment distribution and we want it's so that's the way my mind thinks. As soon as that takes over the people and the relationships, business starts to shake because
Hmm.
now the people aren't important. The transaction is. Lead with consistency.
Hmm.
What that did for me in my businesses is people saw the consistency, they saw the human, they saw the error or failure, but they knew what I was about through the consistency. And that, I believe, created the trust, the team in me and me and them. And lastly, commit to your vision. The vision for the business and life has to be so clear. The clearer the vision, I think you guys, while you guys share this and communicate this, the clearer that vision is, the better somebody could stand with you. So those are a couple of things that
Yeah.
that I would say to that maybe
That
that
is,
struggling organization or that
yeah,
organization that's looking to get over a plateau.
yeah. There's gold there, Wiley. I'm going to repeat some of the things you said. This is Wiley Cortez, right? So, and there are a lot of folks who will hear this who have some kind of a similar context, maybe a different industry or whatever, but they will relate. Develop myself, and you said develop me as the leader with the team. That's a powerful thing that people don't think about. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
modeling, but it's because that leader is going to be a part of the challenge, right? And so that's a key. A key. You mentioned earlier alignment, like, is a key thing.
Yeah.
Something else you mentioned is like aligning the person with where the organization is going, and then there's going to be choices that will come along the way, but that
Right.
alignment is critical. You said prioritizing relationships over transactions, that trust is built in that. Lead with consistency. And I know that Wiley, when he says consistency, has picked rhythms of
Yeah.
investment and he doesn't stop. And it's interesting because one of the most powerful drivers of trust we found is reliability, which is about
Mm.
consistency. It's like if I have a hard time trusting you if you're not reliable and consistent. And so it's so interesting you said that. And then you said finally is remember this, commit to your vision and be specific and clear about that vision. Wiley, that's a massive gift of just bullet points there at the end. So appreciate this conversation.
Yeah.
Sabbath?
This was so good. And Rob, I hear you say all the time. I think probably one of the first things I heard you say when I first got introduced to the ecosystem of Rob McKenna was leaders go first. And Wiley, through
Mm.
this whole rich conversation, I've heard you say I had to go first. And
Yeah.
even in
Yeah.
building that relationship, you had to figure out how to do it with yourself first and then
Right.
reach out. So consistently over and over again, I've heard that in this conversation. So
Yeah.
rich. What a gift. Wiley, we want our listeners, whether you're watching or you're listening, to know how can our listeners connect with you? What is the best way for them to reach out to you, what you're doing, and your company?
You could reach out to me on at wileycortez.com. There's a brief questionnaire. You could fill it out on social media at Wiley_Cortez.
Perfect. And Wiley, one last wild question. Are you in a season of accepting yourself or changing yourself?
I'm in a continuous season of changing myself. A buddy of mine shared, and he just had something on his heart, and he's like, "Man, I need to share something with you." And he said, "I see that you're about to grow and change, but not in a growth of like climbing a ladder going up, but expansion of what you're already doing." So his question to me was, who do you need to become for the expansion to take place? And my first thought was, what do I need to change after that? It was a question for me to sit on, but then I asked myself, what do I need to change? And there was a lot of different things, that good things, not necessarily bad things. I could do more of this and this and be more active or productive here. So that question reminded me of that, Sabbath. Thank you for asking.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Wiley. What a rich conversation. Dr. McKenna, thanks for going there. Thank you for listening to this Wild Conversation podcast. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.